In a fantasy game world called Paladin of Blood, there lived a demon king named Kratos, an evil being terrorizing the world, but not for long. Just yesterday, an ordinary student named Kim Jang-cheol possessed his body. The aim of the game was to revive the ancient hero who had fallen asleep. Our main character let out a huge sigh due to a big problem that he was currently facing. At the same time, his close aide Zephyros burst through the door, reporting to their demon lord that the preparations for war had been completed. Just outside the castle, countless demons were raging to go to war, eager to kill humans and take over their land. Leading this battle were the four generals Asurat, the prince who drinks blood, the cold monarch Sergi, the Archduke of Fog, Hartok, and the Black Boulder tyrant, Baal. With the goal of ending their starvation in today's invasion, they all united to make history, to rip humans apart and crush the elves. Now that they had all gathered in one place, our main character shouted, telling the demon army to listen carefully to what he had to say. The four generals stood quietly waiting for an order from their demon king. But what they didn't expect from the person they were serving was this. Starting today, they would cease their attacks on humans. Not only that, but with a serious face he told them that instead of fighting they would now be farming. They were shocked by this order, so much so that they were left baffled. And as soon as they realized that the demon king wasn't joking, they all shouted, angrily in unison, calling their once respected demon king a joke. Due to fear, Kim Jang-cheol wasn't able to control his emotions, but since this demon king was now possessed by a normal human, he became frightened by their reactions. Fortunately for him, due to his naturally intimidating face, they misunderstood what he was truly feeling at that moment. What they didn't know was that the true main character of this story was starting to awaken. With a ridiculous outfit that only cute girls wear, he stood up from his bed, and that main character was none other than Kim Jang-cheol's former in-game character, a level 999 Nero, named Kimchi. In his former life, Kim Jang-cheol was a graduate, student in a farming course in Korea due to his intelligence. He became the ace of his course in no time. But he wasn't blessed by the people around him. His university professor used him for writing theses without giving him any credit. A spoiled rich kid dumped his projects on him just because he was good at it, and an old geezer ordered him to plow the field without offering any reward. Because of that, he lived his life like a slave, being a doormat for people who took advantage of his kindness. He started to doubt the point of living if this was what he got for treating others with kindness. In the end, after getting fed up with the situation, he shouted angrily that he would kill them all. But since he didn't want to go to jail, the only way for him to release his stress was to play video games. He chose a game that was notoriously difficult and incredibly hard to level up in a game no player had cleared for the 19th time. Desperate for a sense of achievement, he played the game without sleeping once, twice, and so on. After trying hard for the 19th time, he finally succeeded and became the first person to clear Paladin of Blood for the 19th time. Even though he was exhausted, he still felt a sense of happiness, but he didn't stop there. He started preparing once again to enter his 20th playthrough, knowing it would become even more difficult. That is why, using his character named Kimchi, he planned to level up first. After thorough preparation, he was finally ready to take on the 20th playthrough, but as soon as he pressed the start button, something mysterious happened. A flash of light appeared before his eyes, leaving him confused about what was happening. Before he could even get an answer, his soul left his body and started flying towards the screen. And in less than a minute, his soul was transported to another world, the world of the game he was playing. But contrary to how a normal person would react, Kim Jang-cheol was relaxed. Even though he didn't have any idea as to what was happening, he calmed himself down, as this is what a clever person should do. He scanned his surroundings for additional information, and after concluding that this was his soul, he knew instantly that he wouldn't die from falling. But as he kept falling into this world, he noticed the Tower of Life that can only be found in the game called Paladin of Blood. Not only that, but he was now falling toward the tomb of the Paladin, where the body of his character was located. He laughed maniacally because this just meant that he would live a life of being invincible and strong from the start. But soon, all of these thoughts would change after seeing what his character was wearing. He had a defeated look on his face, regretting that he would soon possess a body wearing that embarrassing outfit. Suddenly, his soul made a U-turn, as if fate had heard his thoughts and was now finding him a body that would suit his taste. But what he thought was a blessing would soon turn into regret because the direction where his soul was going was something he didn't want. And that was none other than the body of the Demon King Kratos. He tried begging, but all of it was in vain. In the present, he is now inside the body of the Demon King Kratos, which is driving him nuts. For someone who calls himself a genius, he is now starting to doubt if those claims were real, because if only he didn't have those thoughts at that moment, he would have gained the body of a main character. Meanwhile, his close aide was walking down the hallway when something caught his attention. He heard a voice saying that their Demon King had gotten weaker compared to before. Not only that, but they were speculating that this was the main reason he had ordered the attack on the humans to stop. Those people talking behind his back were none other than the 4 generals of the Demon King army. They were planning to join hands in order to get the throne for themselves. But Hartok was hesitating. What if they were wrong, and this mistake could lead to them getting injured or worse, dying? Sergei came up with a solution that Aseroth would become their shield, but he was instantly shut down by Aseroth himself, as he didn't want to die. On the other hand, while they were busy, Baal could only think of how hungry he was. Since their meeting was going nowhere, he asked the other generals what they would do if there was evidence supporting his claim that the Demon King had gotten weaker. Without an ounce of hesitation, they all agreed that they would kill him with their own hands. What they didn't know was that the contents of their meeting would be heard by Zephyros, the close aide of the Demon King. So he went back to the room where the Demon King was residing. At first he told him about the demons attacking each other due to hunger and many other atrocious acts. Finally, he reported that the 4 generals were planning to kill him since they believed he had gotten weaker. Upon hearing this news, he trembled in fear. He surely knew that he would die if the 4 attacked him together. Suddenly, a thought came to his mind. If he didn't possess kimchi, and it was now just a corpse, this would mean that attacking humans would be better. But Zephyros's report still hadn't ended. In his hand was a red ball containing the video of the tomb of the paladin that was sent to them by General Ogmia. Upon closer look, he saw Kimchi brutally beating up a demon. The demon tried begging for mercy, but it was all for nothing as Kimchi slowly put his hands on his head. Using his fingers, he dug through his eyes, causing massive pain to the demon, who started begging to be killed instead. While showing no mercy to the enemy, Kimchi looked through the recorder with menacing eyes. That led Yangchul to feel even more scared. He knew at that moment that he shouldn't meet Kimchi and must stay in this place no matter what happens. He was now left with no other choice either. He appeared weak, and the 4 generals would kill him, or if he charged into the human world, Kimchi would gouge his eyes out and kill him. He started bawling his eyes out, even after coming to this world. He still couldn't find the happiness he was seeking in his former world. But he didn't give up. The only choice for him to survive was to resolve the issue of food and get the demons to calm down. Zephyros asked the Demon King Kratos where he was going, but due to how normal humans speak, Yangchul made a huge mistake by answering Zephyros with respect. He had a look full of disappointment as he couldn't believe what he had just heard from their Demon King. Yangchul, with a confused look on his face, asked Zephyros what was wrong. He informed him that their Demon King was narcissistic, arrogant, and had no manners, so he shouldn't speak that way. Yangchul didn't know if Zephyros was kidding or trying to provoke him. Then he remembered that when he was Kimchi, Zephyros appeared before him just once, but he was quite the popular character. Despite the huge difference in strength, he courageously faced the great paladin, asking him to go back. But, in the end, the great paladin didn't show any mercy, killing Zephyros with just one strike. As he started to disappear from this world, all he could think of was asking for forgiveness from their Demon King for not being able to protect him. That is the reason for his popularity. But now that Yangchul is living in this world, he can't help but feel annoyed by this guy. Not only that Zephyros doesn't even feel scared while calling their Demon King dumb as a pigeon for not remembering that their land is not suitable for farming. Now that they are outside, he still didn't give up reminding the Demon King Kratos that the past Demon Kings tried farming, but all of it was for nothing. He knew that this land is called the Land of Death, but with his current abilities it's possible for him to save this land. He had a demeanor that showed he was sure he would succeed, because if he didn't, it would mean his death, even though he hated farming. Just like a kid at a children's playground, he used his bare hands to dig through the soil. At first, Zephyros was curious, but when their Demon King Kratos started chewing through the dirt as if it was a piece of delicious steak, He started writing down in his notes that the Demon King was acting strange like a beggar on the street, eating whatever he could get his hands on. Jang Cheol tried to stop him but was shot down by Zephyros, who told him that his job was to record everything the Demon King does. In order to focus, he ignored him and noticed that the ground had 0 nutrients and no nitrogen either. Nitrogen is needed as it is an element that is absolutely necessary for the growth of plants. They are unable to make use of nitrogen in the air by themselves. Because atoms form solid triple bonds, it makes it nearly impossible for them to undergo chemical reactions. Thus, humanity developed the nitrogen fixation process through chemical engineering, leading to a huge increase in food production. But this was impossible in this place. He started thinking about how to make use of the nitrogen fixation mechanism using the nature around them. Then, suddenly, he remembered lightning. Using its high voltage, nitrogen is oxidized into nitrite. It then mixes with rainwater and gets absorbed into the soil. Good thing for him when he was fighting the demon lord Kratos as Kimchi, there was a main technique that he used, and that technique was through the process of inflicting a scratch on the back of his other hand, using his sharp nails, scattering drops of blood into the air, calling this a bloody strike. It explodes with both lightning and moisture at the same time. It's a technique that Jang Cheol could use for creating fertile soil. After making up his mind, he told Zephyros to stand back to avoid getting caught up by his attack, starting with clawing the back of his other hand to get blood to scatter through the air, but he suddenly stopped. He didn't expect that it would hurt this much, calling the demon lord Kratos a lunatic for going through this every time he used this technique. But before he could even give up on unleashing this technique, something caught his attention. As he looked back, he saw the 4 generals spying on him. He didn't need the ability to read their minds because all of them were thinking the same thing, that he had gotten weaker. Due to fear, he let out a strong screech like a child facing his own phobia. Even Zephyros noticed the actions of their demon king Kratos, confirming that he was 100% sure that he had gotten weaker. In order to reclaim his reputation, he endured the pain, as this was better than dying. He let out his pain by calling the name of the technique called Bloody Strike for all of them to hear. But contrary to what he had expected, the blood didn't just scatter in the air. It dropped to the ground, just like any normal blood would do. Unable to endure the pain, he jumped up and down while holding his bleeding hand. Because of this, the 4 demon generals started approaching him with confidence. They were asking if he was feeling unwell, but their eyes said otherwise as they prepared for a fight against the demon king who had gotten weaker. Only one thing came to his mind at that moment, and that was that he was dead. Meanwhile, Kimchi was looking at where the demons were located. It was faint, but he had some memories of his previous life. He had lived more than 10 times, and he always headed for that place. He moved because of the summons of duty, but now it was gone. It felt like it was saying there was no need for him to go there anymore. And now that he had become an NPC, he didn't have any idea what he should do now, or what purpose he had in this world. Instead of continuing the journey that he always did in his previous lives, he decided to turn his back and walk away from all of this. On the other hand, our main character Jang Cheol is facing a huge problem regarding the 4 demon generals aiming for his life. Asurat reminded him about the rules of demons. The strongest is the demon king. He shuddered in fear. All of them were scary and strong. Not only that, but he couldn't even use his technique, so he wondered if this would be the end. Again, Asurat misunderstood. He thought that there was an incredible pressure coming from Demon King Kratos, and that he was already gathering strength to the point his body was trembling. But he still didn't give up. He knew that if the 4 of them fought against Demon King Kratos, they would have a chance to win. However, what he didn't know was that the allies he had confidence in were now standing behind a tree hiding. He had a suspicion when they weren't saying anything, but when he turned around, they really were hiding behind the tree. Cold sweat dripped down his face as he couldn't believe what he was seeing. While they had serious looks on their faces, they were waiting to see how the fight would turn out first before joining in. The nervousness worsened. All he could do at that moment was curse them, calling them evil bastards. They didn't even refute what he was thinking. They accepted that they were evil, for they were demons. But this was not the only problem. Zephyros started broadcasting their fight without the consent of either party, saying that this would be a fight to the death, just like their traditions. Asurat had no other choice at that moment. He steeled his resolve, thinking that he had a chance to win against a weakened demon king Kratos. He was not the only one who was nervous. Even Jang Cheol was busy thinking up an idea of what he should do at that moment. In the past, he tested his strength and concluded that he was stronger compared to a normal adult human. But against Asurat, he had no chance of winning. It looked like he had no more time to think as Asurat charged in his direction with intent to kill. He had seen this movement in the game, but it was no use because this just meant that he wouldn't be able to dodge, and this would be the end for him. But, contrary to what he had expected, he managed to dodge and didn't take any damage from Asurat's attack. He still had a scared expression on his face despite feeling confused as to how he dodged that attack so easily. Before Asurat launched his attack, Jang Chul instinctively knew that when Asurat's left foot was pointing outwards, the attack would be a thrust. Before he even knew it, he remembered that this pattern was the same as when he played this game and faced Asurat as an enemy. Asurat was disappointed. He didn't expect that the weakened Demon King Kratos would be able to dodge that attack so easily. Meanwhile, another misunderstanding was starting to brew. They thought Demon King Kratos was going to launch a counterattack, but he didn't. From thrust to slash, Jang Chul was not having a hard time dodging Asurat's attacks. At that moment, he came to a conclusion after observing Asurat's movements. These were the exact movements that he had seen when he was using kimchi in the game. When he first met Asurat, he was absolutely taken aback, thinking to himself that it was impossible to defeat this guy. He was finally able to defeat him for the first time on his 128th try, and in his 19th playthrough, he was able to make a fool out of him by using hit-and-run tactics. That is why even if Asurat tried his best to attack him using thrusts or slashes with his sword, Jang Chul knew at that moment that he wouldn't lose even if he closed his eyes. As his confidence skyrocketed, his grin stretched from ear to ear. Seeing this ominous look on his face, the other demon generals shuddered in fear, and just like what he expected, he really did manage to dodge every attack from Asurat, easily making fun of him by striking ridiculous poses. They couldn't believe that despite fighting Asurat, he had the nerve to have fun at that moment, mocking his opponent and enjoying every second of it. Asurat looked back at him with menacing eyes, calling him a bastard for playing with him. He managed to conquer that problem now, but this didn't mean that he would be able to defeat Asurat since he didn't have any attack techniques. As he realized that this world shared the same rules as the game, the system appeared in front of him, saying that he had realized the basic rules of this world. Not only that, for succeeding in dodging the enemy's attack, a part of the game system has been unlocked. His eyes grew wide. He couldn't believe if what he was seeing was true, because on the face of Asurat there was a target that Jang Chul used in games when using special skills. Using this opportunity, he endured the pain and started scratching the back of his other hand to the point of bleeding. As he scattered blood all over the air, especially onto Asurat, he called the technique Bloody Strike, hoping that this would work for the first time. Just as he had predicted, lightning passed through his blood into the blood scattered everywhere, hitting Asurat with enormous pain. They thought that the Demon King had gotten weaker, but after seeing this power, their jaws dropped to the floor. Even the spectators from the broadcast of Zephyros started cheering. All of them cheered for their Demon King Kratos. Due to the high damage, Asurat's clothes were pulverized, leaving only his body and a piece of underwear. But even so, the damage wasn't enough to kill him as he started coughing. Jang Chul remembered that Asurat had a great recovery ability, so he would soon be able to stand again despite getting hit by a technique that causes instant death in the game. Before it became too late, Jang Chul used his technique called Bloody Strike again and again until he gave up. The three demon generals misunderstood that Demon King Kratos was trying to minimize his attack so that Asurat would barely live and suffer again and again. But what they didn't know was that no matter how many bloody strikes Jang Chul used, he couldn't kill Asurat. The system popped up telling Jang Chul that he had stripped Asurat of all his clothes, as if mocking him for being a pervert for doing so. But this wasn't the only thing the system would say, because now he could access his inventory. Contrary to what he had expected, the inventory didn't contain anything, just the piece of clothing he was wearing right now. Before he started exploring, he wanted to kill Asurat, but given his abilities, he wouldn't be able to do so. Then, suddenly, a spark of an idea came to his mind. Since Asurat was not dead and still considered a target, he could keep firing bloody strikes no matter how many times he wanted. Using this opportunity, he could infuse the ground with tons of nitrogen, redeeming himself, and calling his great self a genius for this discovery. Meanwhile, the other three couldn't hide anymore, and just to be sure, Jang Chul wanted to test first if they would truly succumb to his feat. First of all, he called the name of Sergei the Cold Monarch, but when she heard the order of their Demon King Kratos, she was torn. She didn't know what to do when she was asked to tie up Asurat, because this just meant that the two of them would be humiliated. Due to fear, she didn't even hesitate and started tying up a surat whom Jang Chio would use as a lightning rod. As time passed by, Asurat's body started to recover bit by bit. Now that he was alive once again, he was now sure that the Demon King, Kratos, had gotten weaker for not killing him with one bloody strike. But this was an opportunity for Jang Chio, and using the body of Asurat, he used it once again as a target to use Bloody Strike. With this, he could oxidize the nitrogen in the air into nitrite, but he was still not done. This time, he called up Hartok, ordering him to cover the whole area with a fog so thick that water would be flowing. Once again, he misunderstood the Demon King Kratos. He thought he was planning to make the whole place wet, so that the lightning would become even more painful. Instead of fighting back, he obediently followed the order of Demon King Kratos. While the fog spread throughout the place, it didn't take a whole lot of time for Asurat's body to become wet. And just like that, Jang Chio kept using his bloody strike on Asurat. He might have a scary look on his face right now, but the reason for this was because he was complaining about how this technique hurt, while others may have been nonchalant like Zephyros, who was watching this situation. It was not the same for the demon generals like Baal and Sergei. He started laughing in excitement because with this he could make the land hear good ground with nitrogen. As his laugh echoed throughout the land, it started mixing up with the cries of agony that Asurat was feeling. After some time, he checked the condition of the soil that they would use for farming. All that was left was to keep infusing nitrogen using this method and improving the soil. Because of the loose monovalent structured soil, neither oxygen could enter nor could water drain well. For farming suitable soil, it needs to be crumbly and granular structured, which is why the thing that he needed to create now was manure, a key ingredient for very healthy soil. And the best source for this was none other than the demon generals. So he looked towards them with a menacing eye, ordering them to give him all of the manure. The three were left stunned after hearing this because after making an example of Asurat with countless attacks as punishment, the Demon King Kratos was now planning to smear Asurat with manure. All of them thought the same thing at that moment. There was no other demon more cruel than Kratos. While there was a heavy commotion happening in the land of demons, the other side was very peaceful. With his ridiculous outfit, Kimchi walked towards the forest looking for a purpose. Then, suddenly, he heard a cry for help getting his attention. As he took a peek into the bush, he saw two young men having a difficult problem. Upon a closer look, it seemed serious. They told him that they were attacked by a group of goblins, and if he helped, they were willing to compensate him for his troubles. But when Kimchi finally revealed the outfit he was wearing, the two were silenced. It looked like their eyes would pop out of their heads due to the sheer shock of seeing this clothing. As his hands slowly approached the two, he reminded them that there was nothing to worry about as he was not a suspicious person. But no matter what he said, the two still didn't believe a word he was saying, especially if it came from a man wearing this kind of outfit. He asked if the injured man could stand up, but before he could even answer this question, he started carrying him like a piece of sandbag onto his shoulder. Now that he was ready, he asked the other guy to lead the way to where they were headed. In order to soften up the mood, he asked the man he was carrying what his name was. But, instead of answering, like in the game, he said he didn't know. Because in this newly found life, this was the thing he needed to find out.